Good afternoon from Brooks Falls. My name is Mike Fitz and I'm a park ranger at Katmai National Park and Preserve. Standing on a wildlife viewing platform specially designed to allow people to watch bears here at Brooks Falls. We were just looking at number 435 Holly and her two cubs. One of them happens to be adopted. On the far side of the river is number 480 Otis, one of the older adult males that we have on the river here. While these bears are here, during today's live chat, I want to talk about the bears, the activity that we're seeing, and I also want to answer viewer questions as best I can. So, I know there are many things that people are wondering about, what the bears are doing, how they're doing it. This is the latest of our live chats here, brought to you by explore.org, and we're very happy and pleased with the partnership that we have with explore.org that allows us to bring these the Brooks River bears to anybody around the world with an internet connection. If you have questions for me today, you can submit your questions in the comments section on any bear cam page on explore.org. Just scroll down to the bottom of the page below all of the other icons for the different cameras that they have and post your questions there. A moderator from explore.org will be feeding me questions via Skype, and I'll be taking those questions a little bit later on in the broadcast. So the family of bears have moved downstream out of my line of sight. It looks like it's only number 480 Otis in the far pool here. He's been here for about an hour. I've seen him catch one fish. And number 480, I think, is certainly a master at patience. He can definitely stereotype a lot of bears to have certain behaviors or characteristics. You can say bears are a lot of things, but they are certainly patient. If a bear learns that a technique is going to give him a huge reward in food, then he's going to be able to practice that technique over and over and over again, and sometimes demonstrate extreme patience in doing it. And I think number 480 is one of those bears that we have here in Brooks River that really does exemplify how important patience can be to an animal. So I'm going to take a moment to step out from behind the camera and reveal myself once I get the camera positioned properly. Try to get the falls in the background so you can watch bears that are walking behind me. And again, my name is Mike Fitz. I am a park ranger here at Katmai National Park and Preserve. I'm very pleased that you could join me for today's live broadcast. This will be the last live chat that I'll be doing from Brooks Falls this season, most likely. I am leaving Brooks River for the headquarters in King Salmon tomorrow. So I won't be out here, but our cams are going to be live as long as the weather cooperates and doesn't blow down any of our antennas, which happened just a couple days ago. And as long as we have enough solar energy to power the cams, then we will certainly have the cams broadcast. Over the next month or so, we'll probably have limited hours for our cams here at Brooks River. To conserve power, so our dumpling cam may be powered down at night. The Brooks Falls cam that I'm on right now may be powered down at night, and the lower river camera probably will start to be powered down at night as well. And that's to help us conserve energy, so we can have these cameras stay live as long as possible throughout the winter. Because I am very curious to know what goes on here in the winter. We don't have any staff stationed out at Brooks Camp during the winter season, although I would like to live here during the winter time. They just don't let me do it quite yet. They say I have to work on other things at the headquarters in King Salmon. So this year, I think if we have the cameras up and live, it'll be a really great thing for all of us to see just what the activity is like. How long will bears be here, for instance? Will we see bears into late November, maybe even early December, because some bears can't be active then? In the springtime, when will we see the first bear? Will it be in early March, or will it come later in the season? And what about the other wildlife that's in the area too? What about the moose? What about the wolves, the wolverines, the little creatures too that we might not notice when the bears are here, like the minks and the river otters? So there's a lot, I think, that we can look forward to, even though the season is kind of winding down here at Brooks River. But our bears are probably still going to be here. Many of them are still going to be here throughout the entire month of October. I don't know how long 480 Otis is going to stay before he leaves and go to his hibernation site, but he could certainly be here for a month or more. Bear activity on Brooks River in the fall usually peaks around the first week of October. So I think we're slowly going to start to see bear numbers decrease over the next few weeks. But that's to be expected. That's nothing that to alarm you. Many of the bears are very fat, and they're at their probably peak size right now. So they're in good shape to go to their dens in the wintertime. So that's something that you can look for. You can look for lesser numbers of bears over the coming weeks, and many of those bears are going to be migrating to their denning sites. Again, during this broadcast, I will be taking questions from you. If you want to submit questions, go to the comment section on any bear cam page on explore.org, and you can submit those questions. The comments are at the bottom of the bear cam pages, so scroll down to the bottom of the screen and you'll be able to find those comments there. And a moderator, Courtney, from explore.org, she's going to be posting those questions and feeding me those questions as they come in, and I'll do my best to try to answer as many questions as possible. I know many of you, though, are curious about what happened to bring to take the cams offline just a couple of days ago, and we had some very stormy, cold weather that pushed through the area. The highest wind gust, I think, that we recorded down at the visitor center at the mouth of Brooks River was 40 miles an hour out of the north, and we're sort of with the north wind, we're sort of on the lee side and the protected side of Dumpling Mountain from a north wind. So if it blew 40 miles an hour down at the visitor center, a north wind on Dumpling Mountain, on the top of that mountain where our repeater is, our radio repeater that shoots the signal out to King Salmon and the rest of the world, had to have been quite extreme. I went up there yesterday thinking that we had just run out of methane fuel. There's also fuel cells up there that help to power the cameras through the wintertime and when there's not enough solar power in the summertime. And I expected maybe just to be able to swap out some fuel jugs and power the cams up that way. But it actually wasn't a power issue. It was an issue with one of the antennas actually blew over. The wind was so strong that it snapped the welding off of one of the pipes that held the pipe up in the air, snapped that off, and when I got there, it was laying on the ground. So I had to sort of jerry-rig it, and I luckily one of the radios was not damaged, and I was able to remove that following some instructions from one of the technicians from explore.org, and remove that radio and mount it to a different antenna that was still attached to the repeater site. And thankfully it was not damaged and it's still working. So keep your fingers crossed that another really strong wind event doesn't blow the repeater down. We've lost radio repeaters on Dumpling Mountain before. Last winter, the highest wind gust down at the visitor center that our anemometer recorded was nearly 80, actually over 80 miles an hour. So again, on top of a mountain, it could be Dumpling Mountain, 2,000 feet, 2,440 feet to be exact in elevation. The winds up there can be extremely strong. So hopefully we don't have winds blowing down our repeaters in the future. Down here along the river, though, the bears, in these windy conditions, sometimes they seem to behave a bit more skittish. Interestingly enough, I mean, their eyesight is probably about as good as ours. Their hearing is about as good as ours, but they rely on their sense of smell more than anything else. And when there are very strong winds blowing through the area, bears probably have a harder time locating the source of different scents. So if they're trying to smell their way through the world, which bears probably do, and their sense of smell is many times greater than an average dog's, and they're trying to smell their way through the world, really strong winds probably hinder their sense of smell, and they can be a bit more skittish. They don't really mind the wind, or excuse me, the rain. They really don't mind the cold temperatures so much, but really the wind does affect their behavior. In fact, I see the bears next to one another, in calm conditions, and they seem to know what's going on. But bears seem to react towards each other from a greater distance when the wind is blowing strongly. So if we do have another windy day, maybe that's something that you can look for on the cams too. You're watching a bear, see if it's reacting to other bears. If the cam zoomed out and you can see maybe the whole scene, watch to see how far apart the bears reacting to one another, because I think it may be that they react to one another at greater distances under windy conditions. And that is one reason why myself and other people that are here have to maybe be a bit more cautious around the bears during windy conditions, because they may not be able to determine the source of the smell that they're taking in, or they may not be able to pick that smell up. In a sense, they might almost be blinded because they do rely on their sense of smell so much. So that's a little bit of information about what we had up on the mountain, the conditions that we were dealing with. Yesterday when I went up there to troubleshoot the cams, it was a nice day. It was cold when I got up there. It was below freezing, but it certainly was a nicer day than the day before. So I'm glad that the weather held and broke for me just for a little bit, and I could go up there and troubleshoot the bear cams for us. Also along the river during the past few days, we've been seeing many different females with cubs. Some of them very young cubs, some of them older cubs. Right before I started the broadcast, or right as I started the broadcast, number 435 Holly and her two cubs walked by Brooks Falls here. We hadn't seen her in maybe over a week or so. She just came back to the river. We don't know where she was at in the meantime. Maybe she was fishing upriver out of the cam's line of sight. It's hard to say. But there are other bears here as well. Number 451 and her three spring cubs. I think I saw her around 1 o'clock down at the mouth of the river. There are many other family groups that you can watch at the river here at this time of the year. And if you want to know more about those individual bears, and you're just tuning in to the bear cams for the first time, definitely try to download the identification book for our Brooks River Bears. There's a link to it in the About section under the main camera window on explore.org, and you can download that book off of the ebook section from Katmai's website. And I know I have a few questions already lined up in the queue here. As you can see today, I'm flying solo. Ranger Roy is back in King Salmon, so he was not able to join me. We'll be doing some other live broadcasts, him and I, probably later this fall. But I'll try to get to as many of your questions today as possible. Since this is the last live chat of the season, I want to do my best to try to answer any of those burning questions that you might have. So please post those in the comment section on explore.org, and I'll do my best to try to answer those questions for you. So I have a few in the queue right now. So I'm not going to be able to read them ahead of time. So let me see what we have here in just a second. So evidently earlier today, somebody was on the cams. People were watching 273 and her cub. It looked like 273 was holding and eating a fish, and her cub went over and started rubbing his or her chin and neck all over the fish. What does that behavior indicate? I'm not really sure. I didn't observe it myself. But bears like smelly things. We often see them roll in areas where there's really strong odors. If there's like gasoline or diesel fuel, if that's spilled on the ground, bears often roll in that. Unfortunately, we had a diesel fuel spill here, or a leak from one of our tanks many years ago, actually up near Lake Brooks, and actually down at the mouth of Brooks River. And when I found the one up at at Lake Brooks, I found it because bears were paying attention to it. I wouldn't have known it otherwise. I watched one bear walk by this spot, and I noticed it actually dig some of the earth out of the ground and just roll in that area. And I didn't pay too much attention to it until another bear came by and did the exact same thing a few minutes later. So I went over to the ground and I could smell the diesel fuel in the ground. So bears like smelly things, and maybe a smelly fish is just something that a scent that they want to be associated with. Not really sure. When a bear is maybe sleeping underneath one of the wildlife viewing platforms here, we can smell them at this time of the year, and they often don't smell very good. So they might just like to have those fish odors on them. I'm not really sure. Even their belly holes that they dig, the places that they happen to dig day beds and rest in, and even at this time of the year, especially at night, they're resting in beds that they dig for themselves. Those places kind of stink, like a combination of wet fur and rotting fish. So if you want to know what a bear maybe smells like at this time of the year, that's kind of the best way that I can describe it right now, is a combination of wet fur and dead fish. So again, I'm not really sure what was going on and why that cub was rubbing itself on the fish, but they do like stinky things, and maybe that's my best guess. And when will the floating bridge at the mouth of Brooks River be taken down? That'll probably be coming out within the next couple of weeks or so. I don't know. They haven't set a date for that. So it'll probably be coming out in the next couple of weeks. So you can look forward to watching that project. Probably by the middle of October. They're going to be shutting down the. Sorry, there's a mink on the platform, and I'm trying to point that out to some of the other people. I'm not going to be able to get to it and turn the camera around for you. But we've been seeing a lot of little critters running around the wildlife viewing platforms. So it's been pretty interesting to see those little critters, and something to look forward to. Again, as the bears maybe depart the area, what other wildlife are we going to be seeing? Maybe we're going to get a chance to see some of the minks and watch those animals a bit more carefully. But going back to the bridge, yeah, I think it'll be probably within the next couple weeks that you can watch that removal, and we'll try to let everyone know when that happens, so you can watch it if you're interested in that project. People are wondering about how much salmon are in the water right now. How many salmon are in the water? The ones I see jumping at the falls do not look like the old spawned out sockeye. Are they coho salmon? And I think most of the salmon that are probably jumping at the falls right now are silver or coho salmon. Not going to be able to, you're probably not going to be able to tell, based on what you're seeing on the cams right now. And I'd have to watch really, really closely to see what species it is. But most likely, the sockeye right now have found their spawning site. The ones that are downstream of the falls have chosen to spawn downstream of the falls. The ones that are upstream of the falls are going to spawn upstream of the falls. Some of the larger coho or silver salmon, they may be still trying to find the right spawning site. So the ones that you're seeing jumping at the falls probably most likely are mostly silver salmon or those coho salmon. There are definitely a lot of fish still in the river right now. Down at the mouth, I see a lot of fish just hanging out there. They're still staging. They're waiting to maybe move a little bit further upriver to spawn at the right time of the year. Down below me, in the water right here, there are still many dozens of fish that I can see in the water pretty easily. There's not a lot of bright sunshine, as you can see right now, but there's definitely a lot of fish in the water below me, and those fish are actively spawning. I walked just upstream here to take a look at the fish ladder before the broadcast, and on the other side of that ladder, upstream of the falls, a lot of fish still spawning in that area. So there are probably thousands and thousands of fish still in Brooks River right now that are in the act of spawning. So food is going to be plentiful for the bears for probably the next couple of weeks or so. But spawning activity at this time of the year is going to decrease, and when salmon become less accessible to bears, when there is less food around, then the bears are going to disperse to other places to try to find a last meal, or maybe going to try to migrate to their denning sites at this time of the year. So that's probably a major reason why we're going to see less bears over the month of October, is because there's just going to be less sockeye salmon for them to feed on. But I think there's still going to be plenty of food in the river for many bears throughout the rest of the month. And am I planning any chats from king salmon? Yes, I probably won't be able to do any until maybe early next week. I can do another chat from king salmon, but I have some training that I have to go to, and then I have some vacation that I'm planning. And I'm not going to tell you where I'm going, but it's going to be some places that I've been to before and that I enjoy. So I'm going to be taking a vacation, so I won't be in the office in king salmon for a while, but I'll try to do maybe another live chat early next week. Maybe Ranger Roy can join me for that, and then I'll also try to do some in November when I come back from my vacation. So stay tuned for that. We always like to try to talk about denning and hibernation in November as a live chat, because that's what the bears are doing. If they're not in their den already in November, they're going to their dens, they're getting close to their denning site, and their physiology is already switching over at that time of the year into that hibernation mode. So we'll try to do a more specific chat geared toward that's something for you to look forward to on the bear cams at that time. So people are wondering, of course, about the rundown of the bears that are currently in the area. Do they look best prepared for the winter? And in fact, all of the bears that I'm actually seeing now look pretty good. Not all of them are extremely fat, like number 480 Otis behind me over here, but there's a lot of food around, and even though we might not have extremely high numbers of bears on the river right now, we still do have many bears here, and we have a lot of fish, and the bears that are here are doing pretty well. So I honestly, I haven't seen a bear that doesn't look like it's to survive hibernation in the spring season. They still continue to lose a lot of weight in the spring. So the bears that are here right now, like, he's not only eating to survive the winter hibernation period, but he's also eating to survive the springtime period before the salmon happen to arrive. So all of the bears here right now, they look pretty fat, they look pretty healthy. Outwardly, again, they look good, but inwardly, I don't know. They could suffer from arthritis or bone ailments that I can't see. Older bears like 480 Otis, they end up breaking a lot of teeth over time. Their teeth wear down over time, so maybe that will impair their ability to survive. It's just really hard to say. But I do know that the salmon run this year was pretty large, one of the largest in the history of Bristol Bay. And the escapement of the salmon coming into the Naknek River watershed and into the Brooks River here was quite large. So the bears that are here are doing pretty well. So some of the bears that people were seeing earlier in September aren't here right now. There's a question about, has anyone seen bear 409 or 868 or 435 lately? Is it possible that some of the bears have already left for hibernation? Well, I can answer with, I give you a definitive answer, of course, with just one of those bears, number 435. She showed up right before the broadcast. So we hadn't seen her in about a week. So she's still out and about with her two cubs, and they all look fat and healthy. The other bears that were listed in that question, number 409, number 868, I haven't seen 409 in a long while. Last time I saw her, I guess it's been over a week since I last saw her. She was really fat, and maybe I think it would. Now that I'm thinking about it, I think it was last Friday was the last time that I saw 409 bead nose. So about a week or so. Whether or not they're moving to their migration site, or excuse me, migrating to their hibernation site, I just can't say. It's a little bit early for bears to be going into their dens in Katmai since salmon are still available in places like Brooks River. It's possible though that if their denning sites are far away from here, if they have to migrate a couple dozen miles or more to go to their denning site, it's possible that they might be going to those sites and migrating towards those sites right now. We just don't know. We have very little information about where these individual bears are going when they're not at Brooks River. So that's a gap in our knowledge right now. 409, when last time I saw her, she was huge. She was certainly, in my opinion, she's the fattest bear at Brooks River. We'll find out in the Fat Bear Week and the Fat Bear Tuesday contest that'll start on this upcoming Wednesday. So we'll be posting a lot of stuff on Facebook about that in the upcoming days. But certainly to go into her den. Whether or not she's going to her denning site right now, I just can't say. But it's a distinct possibility. Probably the bears will start to den here in Katmai in mid to late October. So coming up within the next couple of weeks or so would not be surprising to me if bears started to dig their dens and enter their dens at that time of the year. Question about the single cub. There has been a single cub that was separated from its mother walking around the river. Has it been reunited with its mother? Not to my knowledge. The last time that I saw it, it was single and still on its own, and that was a few days ago. I haven't heard any recent reports. Yesterday or the past couple of days, I hadn't seen it. Yesterday, I was up on the mountain and I wasn't able to really spend much time watching bears down here at Brooks River. So I'm not sure if it's reunited with its mother or not. It's been on its own for a couple of weeks or so. It has been catching a lot of fish. A small bear like that doesn't need a whole lot of fish to get by on a daily basis, and it doesn't need a whole lot of fish to start accumulating fat reserves to go into winter hibernation. And I think bears learn a lot from their mothers about where good denning sites are and where, of course, they can find or how they can dig dens. But they also possess, of course, I think the instincts that tell them this is a good spot to dig a den. This is how I need to dig a den. Whether or not that young bear is going to be able to survive on its own, I can't say. Certainly the odds are against him. A young bear like that, if it's a spring cub or a yearling, it looks pretty young. I'm not really sure what its age is, but it does look like a young bear. Whether or not it can survive on its own, I can't say. The odds are certainly against him. But the bears, as we know, surprise us all the time. Bears that I certainly think have no business surviving extreme injuries or extreme hardships. Sometimes they surprise even me and they end up surviving. So that's a story that we'll try to watch. We'll probably never know the conclusion to that lone bear's story. But it is a story that we get to see here at Brooks River. We get to see a lot of these bears persevere through those hardships, separated from mother, a young bear on its own for the first time. That can be a very difficult thing to watch, but it's part of nature, it's part of the bear world, and it's something that all of these animals here really do have to survive. They have to do it as a 2.5-year-old. Sometimes they have to do it as a younger bear. But as far as I know, it has not reunited with its mother. And is hibernation a common time for older bears to pass away and die? Probably. If you're a bear that didn't accumulate a lot of fat reserves, then you may starve to death in a den. However, hibernation is your best energy conservation strategy. More than anything else, you're going to be, if you want to save energy and you're a bear, going into your den is going to allow you to do that. However, a bear may, with all things considered, if it hasn't accumulated enough fat reserves, it may stay out of its den longer, trying to get, one last meal. That's not to say that if we see a bear in the cam here in December, that it's starving and it's not going to survive hibernation. Sometimes adult bears can find food well into November. so that can keep them out of the den. So it's hard to say. In naturally regulated populations of bears, like what we have here in Katmai National Park, probably the springtime period has a very high mortality rate for bears. You're coming out of the den really thin. If you're a bear that just ate enough to survive the winter hibernation period, you're coming into the springtime and you're finding an environment that has almost nothing to eat. The grass is yet to start growing. If you're lucky, maybe you can find a moose that happened to die over the winter. But there's not many moose in the area. The bears here, like 480 Otis, he's probably not going to be able to go to the Pacific side of the park and start to dig for clams. And a bear his size digging for clams probably isn't worth it. He's probably going to be spending more calories digging clams than he actually is ingesting clams and eating grass. That's probably more worthwhile for smaller bears and younger bears. Big, really mature bears, those food sources may not be able to give them really the calories they need to survive that springtime period. So 480, he's eating for the, next spring. So again, is hibernation a common time for bears to pass away? It certainly can be, but bears die in all seasons. They can die in the winter. They can certainly die in the spring. They can die from injuries and illness that they receive and contract in the summer and fall too. So we know that bears die in all seasons, but certainly they can die in the winter and in the spring. And will I be, during the winter, monitoring the chat board and answering questions from King Salmon? I certainly will be. Part of my job is to monitor the chat board and try to jump on there and answer people's questions from time to time. It's always sort of hard to do that, but maybe throughout the winter, I will maybe try to jump on at once a week or so for a certain period of time and try to answer questions for you. So I definitely want to continue to talk to you about Katmai, about bears, maybe about the volcanoes. We can try to talk about the other things that make Katmai significant, besides brown bears and salmon, which is the focus that we have here on the cams. But maybe we'll try to do some other things as well. So I'll definitely try to do that from time to time this winter. I'll try to monitor the chat and do not only chat in the comment section, but also do some live broadcasts as well. What were the this is always a tough question for me to answer. What are the best highlights, of this Bears season for you? Were there any challenges? I love coming out to the river and watching bears. It's almost, every time that I come out, it's almost a highlight for me. As many of you know, I really do like to get to know these bears on an individual level. They are wild animals. They are pets. They are not pets. They are wild animals. They are not pets. That's what I meant to say. So please don't edit that. But so it makes me sound like I said something I didn't want to say. They are not pets. They are wild animals. But I do enjoy getting to know them on an individual level, because each one of these bears is very different. I do like to watch the stories of certain bears. And each summer, it's very interesting to me and fulfilling to me to see some of the younger bears that I saw around here as younger subadults now becoming mature adults and fishing at Brooks Falls, like number 32, number 89. I like to watch the stories that those bears have allowed me to see here. Stories of course, perseverance and resiliency with 89, since he had a leg injury as a cub. Also stories of maturation as well, and change. How are these bears using the falls as they age? I mean, that, and how has that changed? That's very fascinating to me. So those are highlights of the season that I see every year. I also really like to see the new bears come into the area and watch how they interact at the falls. Certainly watching 775 learn how to fish Brooks Falls in July was fascinating. If you're not familiar with that bear's story, prior to this July, he was a bear that we had only seen in the fall. We had not seen him fish at Brooks Falls or anywhere else on Brooks River in uh, in July. He was only seen in September and October. Seemed to be a bear that really wasn't tolerant to the presence of people. He seemed to kind of stay away from the river mouth, even in October when there was a lot of activity associated with people. But he showed up in July this year at Brooks Falls, and the behavior that he showed tended to indicate to me that he was very, very hungry. He came around, stole a lot of fish. He was challenging a lot of bears. Even some of our very dominant bears here at Brooks River, he was challenging at that time. And then, of course, he was so excited and maybe so desperate for some of those first salmon meals that he would belly flop off of the falls behind me here. And I think a lot of those belly flops kind of went viral around the internet. So if you want to see the replays of that, you can probably pretty easily find 775 belly flopping off of Brooks Falls. And while that was very entertaining to watch and somewhat humorous from my perspective, I got to think about what was going through the bear's mind at that time. Think like a bear sometimes when you're watching the bears here at Brooks River. What they might be doing could be humorous or it could be cute, but often it indicates a certain almost with in 775's case a certain desperation. I think he was desperate to find food, get those first meals of salmon in his belly. And when bears come down to the falls for the first time in June or July and catch that first salmon meal, I'm not going to say that they really enjoy eating food like we do. I'm not sure if mentally they're really comprehending the food that they're putting in their mouth the same way that a human does. But when you see the look on their face as they're wolfing down that food, it's almost like they're satisfied and they feel satisfied when they're eating that meal. So 775, when he came down, chasing other bears, stealing their fish, belly flopping off of the falls, that was a highlight for me. But it indicated to me also happen to be things like just seeing the bears gain weight over time. I like watching have here like 409, bead nose, number 410. They are really big fat bears. They're huge. In any other ecosystem they'd be the biggest of the biggest bears, except for maybe Kodiak Island and other parts in the Alaska Peninsula. You took 409 bead nose to Yellowstone, she'd be bigger than the biggest adult males that they have at Yellowstone. She is a big girl. So I enjoy seeing the size change over the course of the year. I really do enjoy seeing number 747 grow into a monster bear. When I got here, he was kind of a goofy young male, kind of like 89 backpacker, 32 chunk. But he's a giant bear right now. He could be easily 1,000-pound plus bear. Really just a giant animal. So it's very enjoyable to see how these bears change over the years and change throughout the season. So that's kind of a long answer to that question. But yeah, there's definitely been a lot of highlights for me. Challenges, we haven't really faced the same challenges that maybe we did last year. We had a bear show up here last year with a wire snare around her neck, and we were able to see or take that snare off of her neck, and she's a healthy bear. We saw her on the bear cam a lot this year, and I guess that's another highlight for myself, is to see 854 Divot come back and look like a very healthy adult bear. So it is as a bear, and know that I had a part in helping her maybe and rectify that mistake of getting caught in the snare out of season that was designed for a different animal. So now we can see her as a healthy bear along the river. That certainly was a highlight for me. The challenges that I face is here as a naturalist is always learning enough about the animals. And of course, here at Brooks River, we're always faced with a lot of challenges to give people really good wildlife viewing experiences, but also at the same time, making sure that everyone here is viewing wildlife ethically, making sure that we are giving everyone the right information when they step outside of the visitor center from their bear orientation, that they can go out and make the right choices to give bears space and give the bears enough room to go about their business and survive. Because the presence of people here on the river does impact the behavior and the movements of the bears. And we know that the research clearly demonstrates that when people are here, bears use the river differently. Certain bears may not come down to Brooks Falls, for instance, when people are present. And that's why we close the falls platform at night during from June 15th to August 15th. We want to give some of those bears the opportunity to fish without the presence of people altering their behavior. The lodge closes September 18th. Partly because we need to give bears more room at this time of the year. Even though other people can visit at that time of the year, we really do try to heavily emphasize to give bears space in all seasons, and especially in the fall, because this is the most critical feeding time of the year for bears. So if anybody's contemplating a visit to Brooks River, one of the things that I challenge you with is to come here and think about how you can view bears ethically. We want everyone to come here and have a very good wildlife viewing experience. And this is one of the best places in the world to watch brown bears. But while you're here, certainly I challenge you to think about how I can make my experience not only, or your bear watching experience not only really good, but think, how can I make sure that my bear watching experience is the most ethical, and I can have the least impact on the bears? Because when we do have 10,000 people coming to Brooks River each year, that can certainly alter how bears use the river, and it may negatively impact the bears' ability to survive. So that's something that I want everyone to think about in future visits. It's about 40 minutes into the chat, and I really should reintroduce myself if you're joining this a little bit late. My name is Mike Fitz, and I'm a park ranger at Katmai National Park and Preserve. And I'm for the rest of the chat here for the next 20 minutes or so, I'm going to try to answer the questions that are posted in the chat board on explore.org. So I'll do my best to try to answer as many questions as I can. I know that there's a lot of questions still in the queue. Seems like I'm a bit long-winded today, so I'll try to be a bit more succinct and answer as many of those questions that I have. But if you want to post more questions for me, post those in the comment section on explore.org, and a moderator will be sending those questions to me, and I'll be looking at those questions and do my best to try to answer those. And I'm standing at world-famous Brooks Falls in Katmai National Park. I am about 300 miles southwest of Anchorage, Alaska, at the top of the Alaska Peninsula. So if you're more curious about this location and wondering exactly where I am, you can go to the park website. You can download the map of Katmai and find exactly where I am. This is a fantastic place to be. One of my favorite places in the world, right here at Brooks Falls. One of the best wildlife viewing locations in the world too, especially if you want to see brown bears. There's almost no other place quite like it. There's very few places in Alaska that compare to the experience that you can get here at Brooks Falls. And we're very fortunate that the people from explore.org and that organization help to support the cams and fund the cams, and help everyone who can't visit the opportunity to have a wildlife viewing experience associated with our bears and with Katmai. So back to the questions. What am I looking forward to for next bear cam season? Well, again, I'm looking for some of the continuation of these stories that we get to watch from year to year. For example, what about 480 Otis on the far side of the falls behind me? Where will he fit in the hierarchy? He's not as dominant as he used to be. As he ages, will some of those younger bears continue to displace him? So could number 32 Chunk displace 480 Otis next year? I don't know. It's a distinct possibility. Chunk's going to grow bigger because he's kind of a young adult male. Number 480, as he continues to age, he might not be as big next year. He might not be as strong next year. So one of the things that I look forward to each and every season here at Brooks Falls is to see how the hierarchy shifts. Which bears are most dominant, which bears are slipping down in the hierarchy. Very interested to see if 856 will maintain his dominance level at Brooks Falls here in July. What about 747? What about 814? Those bears are very, very dominant, but where will they fit in the hierarchy next year? Those are things that I'm very interested in seeing. And I always like to see which bears are going to come back with cubs. I mean, everyone loves cubs. We like to watch them. We like to see their playfulness, their curiosity. We get to see how they're just young animals that are energetic. They're in a fight for survival, of course, but they show us that out in nature, it's just not always, death and despair. Out in nature, those young bears certainly do show us that animals can have fun and that they can play. And I like to watch cubs just as much as everyone who's on the cams. So I'm very interested to see which adult females are coming back with cubs. And I'm also looking forward to seeing whether or not Holly's adopted cub, number 435 Holly, she adopted a cub last year, still has that cub this year. And I'm curious to know if it's going to come back on its own next year, if she's going to keep both of her cubs that she has for another year or not. We might never see that cub again. She might push both of her cubs away and they may decide not to come back to Brooks River. That sometimes does happen. Young bears, they will disperse sometimes widely away from their mother's home ranges, but you never know. They could come right back here and fish at Brooks Falls in the future as adult bears. So I'm very curious to see if we end up seeing 435 Holly's adopted cub come back next year. So those are some of the things that I'm looking forward to in the bear story here at Brooks River for next season. So question 12 here. I know that you've worked at Yellowstone and other national parks. Can you tell us what you like the most about being able to work at Katmai? Well, there's a lot of things that I really do love about Katmai. I love that it's remote. I do really actually enjoy the remoteness. I've never been one that needs to go out for a night on the town. I'd much rather just kind of spend some time, doing my own thing, whether it's watching bears or trying to identify plants, whatever it happens to be. So I enjoy the remoteness of Katmai. I enjoy its wilderness landscape. Katmai is a big enough place, and a place that people don't pay attention to like many other places in North America. So I found that if I really pay attention to what's going on here, I can discover some novel things, and I really enjoy doing that. Through my work, I am able to experiment with different things. I'm able to experiment with different technology that allows us to reach audiences. So that's very interesting to me. So the freedom to experiment is a very enjoyable part of my job. And getting to talk to people and thousands of people across the world is also very enjoyable for me as well. So there's a lot of different things that I enjoy about Katmai National Park. I enjoy its remoteness. I enjoy its wilderness landscape. I enjoy watching all of the resources here. Not only do I like to watch bears, but I like to watch salmon. I like to watch birds. I like to explore the volcanoes that we have here. So there's a lot of different stuff that makes Katmai a very interesting place. So this is a very special place in a lot of different ways. And in a nutshell, I like a lot of it. Again, I'm going to try to be a bit more succinct because I know there's a lot of questions, but yeah, I like a lot of things about my work here in Katmai and the resources here at Katmai. When do I start work on the 2016 Bear Book? Well, I'll try to start working on that probably as soon as the bear monitoring data gets consolidated and put into the database, so I can refer back to that and I can gain access to the bear monitoring photos that Ranger Leslie and other people have taken throughout the summertime, because a lot of the photos that you see in the bear identification book I take, or other staff here at Katmai take, and I wait until later in the fall when I can consolidate all of those photos together and all of the information about the bear stories here. I don't want to start working on the book and updating maybe the page on Otis right now, because something could happen, and then all of a sudden if I issue the book and Otis is still here in November, then all of a sudden the book may be obsolete. So I want to try to consolidate all of that information and start working on it later this fall and this winter, and we'll try to issue the next version of that Bear ID book in the spring of 2016. So that's something that you can look forward to. how many visitors were at Brooks Camp this season. So there was, this year we're probably going to be close to about 10,000 people. We keep a pretty good record in our visitor center at Naknek Lake and near Brooks Lodge, because everyone who comes to Brooks Camp has to go through a bear orientation. And on one of our more recent live chats that Ranger Roy and I did, we're in the Brooks Camp Visitor Center, and we talked a little bit about the bear orientation and what we try to tell people in that orientation. So that's by regulation, everyone who comes to Brooks River, when the Visitor Center is open, they have to go through an orientation, and that explains why you have to, or how you have to behave here, explains our food regulations, our gear storage regulations, to make sure that we're protecting ourselves and we're protecting the bears and the experience here at Brooks River. And we keep track of how many people, we keep statistics, of course, of how many people are in that orientation. And this year, it was at least 9,500 that went through that orientation. And there's also a group of people that maybe don't go through the orientation. Maybe they come with a designated guide that is authorized to give the orientation themselves. And I can imagine that there's probably a few hundred people that didn't go through that. So I would be surprised if we were, less than 9,000 people this year. We probably definitely gave out at least 9,500 of the bear orientation pins that we ordered this year. So we went through almost all of our pins this year. So yeah, probably between 9,000 and 10,000 people easily came to Brooks Camp this season. And that's been about average for the past 10 or 20 years or so. And how accessible are the facilities at Brooks Camp? Are they wheelchair friendly, or is the terrain too difficult? To be honest with you, our facilities are kind of bare minimum standards for anybody who has mobility issues. So if you are reliant on a wheelchair to get around, a lot of our trails are gravel, and they may not be very steep in most places, but they are rough surfaces. They're crushed gravel. It can be hard for people in wheelchairs to move around. A lot of the buildings aren't that wheelchair friendly. So again, it can be done, and we do have people that certainly do come here with wheelchairs each and every season. But it can be a difficult thing for people to get back and forth if you are limited to moving in a wheelchair. And I don't know if you're going to be able to hear it, but there is some heavy equipment moving into this area right now. One thing that I should tell you a little bit about is that they're going to fill in the fish ladder here at Brooks Falls. It's eroding. It's no longer passable to fish. So they're going to fill that in to make sure that it doesn't erode away any further and erode the bank where the wildlife viewing platform is at. And actually, if it eroded away significantly, it could really alter the whole dynamic here at Brooks Falls. It could change where the river is going, and the river could actually all of a sudden migrate through that fish ladder, and we would have everything on this side washing away, and we may not have water running over Brooks Falls. So if you're hearing any equipment in the background, that's what it is. They're trying to move some large boulders into that spot to try to block off the fish ladder and make it a bit more stable so it doesn't erode the bank on this side of the river. So you may see some work associated with that in the future if anybody's working right down below me at the head of the fish ladder. So back to the question about the facilities. It can be very difficult also for anybody who's mobility impaired to get in and out of the small planes that fly to Brooks Camp. If you can get on one of those small planes to fly to Brooks Camp, you can get in and out of those with assistance, then you can walk around Brooks River here. So I certainly think that if you can do that, then you can get around to visit the wildlife viewing platforms and get in and out of the buildings. So more than anything else, it probably is the small planes that limit whether or not you can get to Brooks Falls. And question 16 here, am am I sick of camp food by now? And will I never eat a pancake all winter? Actually, I could probably eat pancakes most mornings. I didn't make that many this summer. I tried to ration my blueberry supply for that, and I kind of ran out of maple syrup too. So I'll have to stock up once I get back to town. When we're out here, one of the challenges for the staff working out here is that we're very, very remote. If we forget something, it's not easy to get. We just can't go to the grocery store. But sometimes we'll like to treat ourselves with a meal in Brooks Lodge, for instance. The internet has really changed how we live out here, because if we do forget something, maybe we can't go to the grocery store right away, but we can mail order it through the internet. So I don't necessarily feel deprived, but it will be nice to maybe get out to a city and go to a restaurant and enjoy a meal that I don't have to cook. But yeah, back to the other half of that question, I'm certainly going to be eating a lot of pancakes over the winter. And have we seen number 284, who sometimes I think people have nicknamed Electra, and that's not an official nickname for her, but that's a nickname that I think a lot of people have been referring to her on the cam. To me, she'll always be number 284. She was here last week or so, so she hasn't been around all that much. A lot of the bears changed their behaviors from July to September. Some of the bears, like number 128, who's another sizable adult female, we saw her daily at Brooks Falls in July. We don't see her that much right now, although she is, prowling the river. So she number 284 is around, number 128 is around. A lot of those bears, they kind of tend to come out maybe at dawn and dusk. For whatever reason, they do change their behaviors as the season progresses. So maybe they want to come and fish at Brooks Falls in July and do that at all hours because salmon are available at all hours. But maybe as the season progresses, they're just not as tolerant of people. Maybe they want to fish under the cover of darkness. I don't behaviors as this, some of them at least, as the season progresses. And number 284 has been around. Have I seen, and a question about a couple of other specific bears that we have here at Brooks River. Have I seen 868 and 83 interact with each other this fall? Do siblings tend to be more tolerant of one another? I have not seen 868 and 83 interact this fall. I have seen them do that in July. And 83 tends to be a little bit larger and a little bit more dominant than 868. And I've seen, and if you're not familiar with those two bears, they're thought to be siblings. They're thought to be brothers. And I've seen them interact here at Brooks Falls in July. And I have seen 83 push 868 out of the jacuzzi, which is the plunge pool that's right on the top of my head. If you're looking on the cams, that's what we call the jacuzzi. So I'm not really sure that siblings are more tolerant of one another. They certainly recognize each other from year to year. Bears are really smart with that keen sense of smell. They can recognize one another from year to year. They're not gonna forget. So that's something that I can say that, I haven't seen them interact this fall, but I have seen them interact in the past. I don't think that they're more tolerant of one another. I got a few more questions in here. It's almost 3 o'clock, and I can see that the battery on my, I think since it's cold, the battery on my camera is draining just a little bit quicker than it would otherwise. So I think it's going to last for another couple of minutes or so here. But if it goes offline, thanks for joining me this season. I will be again back online from time to time when I'm in King Salmon. And before the camera dies and before our feed potentially dies, I want to thank everybody at Explore.org who helps to fund the cams. Everyone like Jonathan and Courtney and Rick who help provide support for these cams on their end of things. The people that Explore.org hires that sets up the cameras here and the repeaters up on Dumpling Mountain, I'd like to thank them as well. And all of the camera operators too. The camera operators, those are the people working behind the scenes to make this a really great experience. And this experience watching the bears on the cams would not be as good without our volunteer camera operators. They donate thousands of hours each year of their own personal time. They are not paid to watch the bears here on Brooks River, drive the cameras, and try to give you a really good bear watching experience. So it certainly is a heartfelt thanks to all of those people to make this. But I do have a couple more questions here. It is 4 o'clock, so I'll try to get to those questions before I conclude the broadcast. Do sows and cubs nurse all the way until they emancipate their cubs? They probably do. Cubs tend to nurse less frequently as they age. So you'll see 2.5-year-old cubs nurse a lot less than spring cubs, for instance. But they will nurse as long as they're with mom. What sort of triggers the mom to push her cub away is probably a matter of weaning. They probably haven't been nursing for a long time. As they come out of the den in the springtime, mother is probably going to go back into estrus, and her physiology says it's time for me to drive this cub away. And at that time, they're not going to be nursing. So cubs will nurse with their mothers as long as they're with mothers, but the frequency of it is a lot less as they age. And a 2.5-year-old cub will nurse a lot less than a spring cub. Do cubs help dig the den? Not sure. I've never watched a bear dig a den before. Nothing that I've read about actually indicates that a bear, that a mother bear sees a cub digging a den with her. Well, that's not a very articulate answer. I don't know. I don't know if anybody has really witnessed it. However, cubs do mimic the behavior of their moms, so I would not doubt if a cub sees a mom digging into the hillside that it might want to try that out. Not sure, but since bear cubs happen to mimic their mom so much, I would not doubt if they do dig right alongside of mom just because they want to do what mom does. That's how they learn how to survive in the bear world, by watching mom and learning from her. And last question that I have in here. Okay, so my camera battery died. I hope you can hear me again. Hopefully that wasn't an abrupt conclusion, or too much of an abrupt conclusion to the broadcast. Do I know of a good website or book that has pictures of brown bear anatomy? Not off the top of my head. I can look for that. If I find any books that I've referenced in the past, then I'll try to let you know. But yeah, I don't know of a good website or a book of pictures of brown bear anatomy. So I'll try to get back to that. But again, it's a little bit after 4 o'clock. If I am back live, I would like to thank all the viewers for tuning in this afternoon, and I hope I was able to answer many questions that you're interested in. Thanks to everyone at explore.org, once again, who helps to support and fund the cams, and all the camera operators who help to make this experience possible. And I'll be back online maybe next week, and certainly after I get back in November to chat with you more, and look for me throughout the wintertime to chat some more about Katmai and the brown bears here. So Once again, thanks for joining me today, and enjoy the bears in the meantime.